Welcome to the IP2 podcast. I'm Shay Ashby, and as always, I'm joined by Felix Chung.
We are honored to be joined by Melody Weipeihana today. Melody has been a leading community figure in Flesh and Blood for years, adding a spark of positivity and appreciation for the game to the community in numerous ways. She is a founder and one half of the Pitch Perfect podcast, and one of the three founders of the Rainbow X Pitch League. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Kia ora, thank you for having me. I'm very honoured to be on your guys' podcast today. So thanks, Felix and Shay.
Yeah, can you please tell us, you said kia ora. What
Yes.
does that mean?
It means hello in Māori. So I am Māori, a Māori from New Zealand, and it's our greeting. It's just like the everyday greeting, like, hey, it's kia ora.
Is that something that's popular among the general population of New Zealand, or is it more for the Maori community?
It's good question. It's becoming more commonplace. Like
Yeah.
it's sort of te reo Māori, which is the language of Māori, is becoming more, well, it's spoken a lot more and taught more in schools and especially in workplaces, government, which is where I've just recently come from. So we're seeing a lot more of it out there, which is fantastic. And I don't know if you're on my Twitter, but you'll see I try to use te reo Māori quite a bit. And I call James White Hemi Ma, which means James White in Māori, and that's what he also gets called around the office. So
Very
yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. And just a total tourist question here, but if for anyone visiting New Zealand, like, is it kind of a poser thing to try to pick up the language and to greet the locals like that, or is it considered acceptable or encouraged? Like,
Oh, absolutely.
actually,
It's
what's that?
encouraged
Yeah.
and accepted. Yeah. It's interesting. So I try not to go into too many segues, but quite
We
a
love
lot
it.
of people that visit New Zealand, all people that are here working, tend to learn te reo Māori and, like vocationally get training and become fluent before Māori people do. We don't grow up, not everybody grows up learning Māori. So that's really cool. You come across, somebody that's Spanish or Italian who speaks fluent Māori, and you're like, whoa, I don't even speak fluent Māori. That's awesome.
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's very cool. We usually like to start off our interviews with like an elevator pitch from our guests. So can you give us a little about your background in games or profession, whatever you want to share with us?
Okay. An elevator pitch is usually really quick. I don't. So elevator pitch.
It doesn't have to be quick.
Okay, cool. I don't have a background in gaming at all. Like the last game and pretty much only game I ever played was Pokemon Go, and I loved it because it was social and it was face to face, and so you got out and you got a bit of exercise.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of professional background, so what would you call me? So I'm a contractor, and normally the contracts that I'm picking up is the last one I had, I was a manager for the Ministry for Environment in New Zealand. So my team developed all the guidance and tools for environmental policies for the country. I have a fashion background as well. So I'm looking to cosplay Melody sing along at some stage.
Oh.
But yeah, so that's kind of professionally what I do. I'm actually not working at the moment. So I finished up my last contract the day after my birthday. So about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So I'm living my best life. I've just been sorting my Bright Lights bulk and sorting out a lot of flesh and blood. But yeah, and so my hobbies outside of Fab as well. That's a really good question. Fab is pretty much it for me. So if I'm not playing or trying to figure out decks or attending armories, I collect. So you guys that are listening, because you can't see behind me, I've got shelves full of folders. I've got boxes and cases, and so that's probably my other hobby, collecting.
How did you get started in Fab? Like, where did you hear about it?
I heard about it from one of my old jobs I was in a couple of years ago. They were having a big moan because I think Monarch had just come out, and it had gone to the moon, and they were like, "Oh, it's ruining the game," blah blah blah. I was like, "What's this game? What's this game? Never heard of it." And then I went to a board game convention, and some board game friends are like, "Melody, you should try this game." I'm like, I don't know. And then we had lockdown, and I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm gonna have a look. And I watched Chris Sire's unboxing, and I'm like, oh my goodness, the art is amazing. And through lockdown, I would just stream it on the TV and watch him get really excited. And that's kind of how I heard about the game and sort of became interested in it. I didn't play at all, so I just collected. How I started was
Yeah.
my first box that I ever bought. I spent a lot of money on a Monarch first box, lots of money because it was so much back then. And all I wanted was a Phantasmal Footsteps. What did I pull? I pulled a Phantasmal Footsteps, and that was it. It was over.
Oh, nice.
I was like, okay,
Amazing.
that's me. I'm going to continue to collect these sets and these cards, and it all kind of went from there. But I was mostly just enamored by the art, the beautiful art. So I've purchased a lot of artist proofs since then as
Mhm.
well, trying to get my favorite cards. But yeah, that's how I heard about the game and got into it.
So you kind of mentioned this is like your first trading card game. What got you excited about collecting? Because like for Felix and I, this is also our first trading card game, and we're
Mm.
not huge collectors, but we do also like to collect things. And prior to this, I have always mentioned that I didn't actually understand collecting. It didn't make any sense to me. But now, as I've kind of gotten into Flesh and Blood and the collecting aspect, I've found things that like I really enjoy about collecting. So I'm curious to know what it is about collecting that excites you or drives you to that aspect of the game.
Great question. So just a disclaimer, I did play a little bit of Magic the Gathering during that same lockdown period with a friend of
Mhm.
mine because he played it and he was like, let's try this game. I'm like, okay, cool, but I didn't like it. But in terms of collecting, for me, it's the thrill of the chase. So I'm quite a gambler. So when I'm
Okay.
cracking packs,
Yeah.
so like I think the big problem was that I got Phantasmal Footsteps in my first ever box, right? Screamed the house down. I'm like, that's it, I'm sold. If I hadn't have gotten it, I don't know if I would have cared so much, but I was hooked. And so I'm kind of on that same high all the time. Like I crack a lot of product, and when I'm hitting, cool hits, I'm like, yes, get really excited. And then that's kind of the thing for me. But aside from that, it's the art. And I've made friends with some of the artists as well because I guess I bought a lot and also we become friends, and just really appreciative of what goes into the artwork for Flesh and Blood. And I guess the art direction as well because it comes from LSS.
Mhm.
But yeah, I'm not really in the to collect to make money.
Mhm.
I
Yep.
just like it to collect it. My precious Lord of the Rings. Yep, Smeagol. Like my
Yep.
collection of everything.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome. How do you store your collection? I'm just curious. It sounds like you have quite a few artist proofs
Mm,
and all that.
I have a rainbow array of folders, so I've got about
Yeah.
20 folders that have my Majestic playsets in them. And I've got there's this really cool brand. What's it called? It's called Palms Off Gaming. They're an Australian outfit and they do these really awesome,
Okay.
like top loader. Have you heard of them?
No,
And
No,
I
I haven't.
haven't, but we'll need to check that out.
they've got top loader slots. And so I've got 100 of my artist proofs in one of those. And it comes with a really cool little like felt bag that you can put them in. So I like cool things like that. And I have big 60-liter containers. I don't know what you call like with snap locks with all my cases
Yep. We
and
use liters too, don't worry. It's
okay, cool.
yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
kind of how I'm just looking at I'm surrounded by flesh and blood in this room, and
It's a
I've got like
problem, isn't it? Yeah.
it's not a problem, it's an opportunity.
Yeah.
I need an
I like
entire
it.
room, a temperature controlled
Oh
room
boy.
for all my stuff.
I got to
But
Yeah.
yeah,
use that to
that's
sell to my wife. She doesn't like it in the living room. I gotta keep it. I gotta keep mine clean.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
All
But why?
right.
Well, how do
And
you guys look after your fab? Do you have any tips?
oh, I need tips because the thing is, and one of the problems that I have with collecting is I feel like I get all these cool cards, but I don't have a chance to display them, or
Mm,
they just get tucked in a binder and then I forget about them,
yes,
and once in a while I'll remember and I get sad. I'm like, hey, what about that card that I was really excited to get and now it's forgotten about? It feels like actually Toy Story 2. I've tucked the I've tucked the card away and never to be played or seen again. I feel like I'm a dragon just hoarding riches away
I
from
feel
people.
you.
That's my biggest problem. Yeah.
But you've got a
Mm.
little, I can see in the background, sorry for those that are listening, you've got a display case, yeah?
Yeah, I
Is that
do,
in the
but those
corner?
get filled up. They get filled up. Yeah. There's never enough space. That's one thing I've realized. I've
That's,
had to get a
yeah.
temporary table that's become a not temporary table. It's a huge
Yeah,
problem.
it's been there for a bit.
Yeah, Shay's calling me out. It hurts.
No,
It
There's
easy.
no
It's
hurts.
so
shame
totally,
here, no
Yeah.
shame.
totally
Yeah.
fine.
All
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
No.
storing for me is, I don't know, it's a conversation that comes up on the Discord all the time. I've mentioned it many times how I store my stuff, and I think I have the best system, but that's because it's mine. So, but I usually just organize mine between play cards and then cards that I'm collecting. So I just have zipper binders for the cards that I'm collecting. And then anything that I play goes into, like, we call them shoe boxes. I don't know, they're like 800 count
Yep.
cards.
Yes,
Um,
I've got
uh,
heaps of those.
yeah, so I have I don't know, we call it like a hotel or whatever. It has like 12 slots for each box. Um,
I
so
want
like
one
it'll
of
hold
those.
it'll
We don't have
yeah.
them here.
So
Ooh.
I have one of those, and I have just every class name on every box. And right now every class fits in a box, and then you just grab the sleeve of 800 count, put it on my desk because again I can't keep stuff in my living room because of the optics, and then yeah, I just get my stuff out. But I don't get to display my collection like some people do. So I go into my basement and I go grab a binder and I sit on the stairs and I just flip through the book and I just look at the art and enjoy my collection by myself sitting on my stairs in my basement.
Oh, that is touching, but also sad.
Yeah. Right?
In my basement on the stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's okay. Life of a family man.
Love it.
All right. So before we move on from the topic of art, Melody, would you be able to tell me what I guess, some of your favorite pieces of art or card designs in the game?
Definitely Phantasmal Footsteps. Um, and Shock Charmers by Iswadi is another one. And Swarming Gloomvale. I love Swarming Gloomvale.
Oh yeah.
Beautiful. So those are probably my top three. A lot of the Illusionist art is really nice as well. Like uh Miraging Metamorphosis.
There's yeah. That's really good. Shimmers. My wife loves her top cards are Phantasmal Footsteps and Shock Charmers and Shimmers.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
look at us twinning.
And
Does she
yeah.
play?
She does. She
Does
does.
she?
Yeah, so yeah, and it was the art that really drew her in as well. So would you be able to tell us a little bit more about New Zealand? I mean, I
Mm.
just learned that you were responsible for the environmental policy for the whole country, which is awesome. And what else can you tell me about New Zealand? Can you start with maybe the city that you live in and
Mm.
where is
Yeah,
it
sure.
located?
So I live in a city called Tauranga. We're on
Hmm.
the eastern part of the North Island of New Zealand. So New Zealand has two parts. There's a North Island that's separated by, a sea, and then there's a South Island. So
Okay.
up here we tends to be a lot more sun up this way. Down south, where the new calling is going to be in January of next year in Queenstown. Down there, they get a lot of snow, and but up here, especially where I live, it's kind of like a beachy city. So about a 15-minute drive for me is one of the best beaches in the country. It's called the Mount Maunganui, and it's a
Hmm.
hot spot over summer. It's beautiful over there. Yeah, so I don't know how many people live in Tauranga. It is a city, but it's probably, yeah, I have no idea, but that's where I live. And I
No,
actually live
no,
rurally, so I live on the outskirts, not in the hustle and bustle of the city.
got it. And do you like it there?
I love it here. Yes,
Yeah, that's
absolutely love
awesome.
it here. I lived in a few places in the country, like Auckland, which is where LSS are,
Mhm.
Wellington, which is really cool. I've just moved from there a couple of years ago, but definitely Tauranga. It's nice and chill here.
Are the North and South Islands pretty distinct? I mean, I've never been to New Zealand. I really hope to go. I'm just wondering when people think of New Zealand, things like the Lord of the Rings and like
Mm.
all those beautiful landscapes, are they thinking of the South Island or the North Island? Like, what's the difference between the two even?
Well, okay. If you think about Lord of the Rings, a lot of Lord of the Rings was filmed down south,
Okay,
like
Mhm.
the landscape and like amazing, landscape down there. Whereas like Hobbiton is not far from where I live, so it's like 40 minutes away. It's in a place called
okay,
Matamata. It's a rural little town, tiny little town. Um, so there is a difference. Like I said before, down south, like that's where all of our ski slopes are. So snowboarding and
mm,
skiing. Coronet Peak is down there, which is where Queenstown is. The card Coronet Peak, so inspired by that. And it's huge rural community down south. Up this way, yeah, we're more beachy. There's a lot more beaches. And yeah.
okay.
Hmm.
And more people live on the North Island, right?
Yes.
Like it's more
Yes.
cities and all of
Yeah.
that. Okay. That's awesome. New Zealand is also a pretty small country, right? Like I think you were talking how many million people?
5.
That's yeah, that boggles my mind because New Zealand has such a massive cultural impact across the world, and in terms of population, only quote unquote 5 million people live in the entire country. It's you know, great things. So many great things have come from New Zealand, like yeah, Lord of the Rings, Flesh and Blood. Um, yeah, the list goes on.
Is that a trope that gets or a reference that gets tiresome? Like that the most famous thing is the Lord of the Rings, or is that still something that's like that you're excited about, or that it's great to hear that people know of, you know, New Zealand because of something like that?
Um, yeah, I think it's still pretty cool. Like that's probably one of, even though, the person that split the atom was Kiwi, can't remember his name, but there's
Hmm.
scientific stuff we've done as well that's
Yep.
pretty important. But I think that's probably the most memorable that many people can relate to is Lord of the Rings, Peter
Yeah.
Jackson and his movies, and probably Weta Workshop as well, because they've worked on so many movies.
Yeah.
They're well
Mhm.
known. Yeah.
With working in environment, and I think it was Lord of the Rings that really helped put New Zealand on the map as a movie making destination. Was that an industry that you had to work with at all during your time working with the environment?
No,
No.
no, 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 no. I mean, I know people that were in the movies. I mean, obviously, we're a small country of 5 million.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I haven't had much to do. I know that there's loads of stuff as since then, because it really raised the profile of our country. We've had loads of stuff recorded here
Yeah.
in heaps and heaps and heaps, which is fantastic. Great for our
Mhm.
economy and tourism. Now that tourism
Yeah.
has opened back up since COVID, it's been really good.
Can you tell me a little bit about the culture of New Zealand? What makes New Zealand unique to others?
To other
Other
countries?
other yeah, to other countries, other cultures, perhaps.
Oh, um, that's a really good question. What's unique about us? I think w- one of it's a great thing for us is that we have a Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is the Treaty of Waitangi, which um, was created when we were colonized, and it was between Maori and the English. So we actually have a treaty and we have an understanding between us, which so for Indigenous people that's great. So we have rights, although we struggle a bit, and there are certain our culture as a Māori, because I'm a Māori person, is retained in our language and all that sort of stuff. So that is something that's really special that I don't think has happened in a lot of other countries, if at all. So a lot of the Indigenous cultures, their languages, and that kind of stuff has been lost from colonization, and they've, maybe they get put on a reservation, or, if we look to Australia with the Aboriginals, um, it's, yeah, and for a lot of Indigenous cultures. So I think we're very, I don't know if fortunate's the right word. The Māori people were great and they were onto it, and they said, you know what, we need a treaty so that we've got this understanding. Um, I think that is really special, and I think that is unique. Um, and yeah, that's probably my top one. Sorry, getting a little bit
Yeah,
political
no,
there, but
that's huge. And Canada has a very checkered past with its First Nations people, and it's
mm,
yeah, it's still something that the nation has to grapple with. Same as many other cultures or many other countries worldwide. So, and I mean, just to pivot back towards Flesh and Blood here, would you be able to tell us maybe some ways that New Zealand, um, or the heritage of New Zealand or the culture of New Zealand is in the DNA of Flesh and Blood?
the culture of New Zealand.
I
That's
mean,
a tough
or
one.
is it? I guess, or am I just drawing too
Oh,
many
no, no, no,
lines
no.
here?
I think the culture of the community, the flesh and blood community, is very New Zealand, Kiwi-ish. Like we're very friendly, we're very approachable, and inclusive. So I think that's what comes through from the community game and community that we have in the game, whether it's online or
Hmm.
offline. In terms of like within the game, the tenets of the game, I don't I don't know. I've not thought about it too much. I don't. That's probably a better question for James.
Okay.
Well,
Well, you next time you see him, let him
yeah,
know. We'll
he'll
Yeah,
we'll
be
know
have
you
like,
him on
well,
as a
would
what
like
do
to have
you?
him on.
Yeah, like I mean, I don't know if you guys probably are aware, like loads of characters and um, even how they've designed the cards and whatnot are influenced by friends, family,
hmm
experiences that James had, people that are close to him. Like there's a little quarters on the cards. I'm just having a look. I'm surrounded by cards that for our resources.
Hmm.
Um, like that's a part of Māori culture
Oh,
that
really?
James has talked to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just gonna grab my
Yeah, I
Yeah,
my
please.
didn't know that
Yeah.
either. These are the things that
yes,
I like hearing. Like you had mentioned
Yeah.
Coronet Peak earlier, and is a mountain in New
yes,
Zealand, and
in
a lot of people.
Queenstown.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people knew that. I'm
Oh,
going to show you something that nobody can see.
okay.
Um, a year and a half ago, uh, at Christmas time, I went on a little endeavor with my daughter, who was 7 at the time, to help draw a deck for me. So I wanted her to draw all of the cards for Icelander cards. And
Mhm.
then so when I explained to her, I said Coronet Peak, and she's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "Well, the picture's a crown," but I was like, it's actually a
Whoa,
mountain in New Zealand. And she was like, okay. So she kind of took that and she drew this little mountain. And it's like my favorite thing that
that
she
is
drew for
so
this deck. And so when you
cute.
brought it up, I was like, I had to show you, just because it's a little tidbit. I don't know how many people know that. And I think that's really cool. So
Oh,
when we're talking about like the influence of New Zealand on the game, this is also the first thing that comes to my mind as well. So
mm.
I
It's
thought that was kind of
interesting
neat.
because I guess I don't know if it's just because we're from New Zealand and we see LSS and members of from the team, and I mean we usually see James as much as anybody else, which isn't a lot, but maybe we take it for granted. And like, because we know it, we're like, oh,
Yeah.
Coronet Peak, nice one, LSS. And, the Cordus and the, like on the cards and stuff. And, like there's Ragamuffin's hat, which is somebody in the community that's also a friend. That's Ian Kendalline, I
Ian, yeah,
believe.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Genus is another friend of James's. And there's the Meeps. Have you guys heard the Meep story?
No, I haven't heard the memes. Please
Oh
No.
share.
my God. So I learnt this at Nationals, our Nationals this year, a couple of months ago. So the little, the little Meeps, the cute little furry Meeps,
Mm-hmm.
they are
Mhm.
inspired by, it's James's nephew's daughter. I think her name is Astrid. She must be like 5 or 6. Anyway, she has these imaginary friends, and her imaginary friends are always stealing things. So he decided, you know what, we're going to call them Meeps. And so there's another picture where there's a girl. She's a giant girl. Anyway, you see the Meeps throughout, like, in Tales of Aria, I think they sort of popped up. They're
Okay.
dancing. But that's where they've come from. That's where they're inspired from.
That's cool.
This,
I love stuff like that. And I hope that there eventually is like a website dedicated to all of the little Easter eggs that
yes.
LSS and James put into the game. That, whether they're for real or speculative, I love hearing these stories and kind of like learning more about the game. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. So just getting back to that influence of New Zealand
Mm,
on the just thinking about the online community of Flesh and Blood
hmm
when I got into the game around the same time as you in Monarch slash Tales of Aria, the online influence of New Zealand was huge. So many of the top players were from New Zealand. They were posting all over the discords and just a lot of influence versus today. The game is worldwide. There's so many different countries and people from all over the world playing and enjoying the game and contributing to that community. Do you still see the fingerprints of that early New Zealand dominated or New Zealand majority community carried on in the community today, or has it changed?
So do you mean in online? Is that what you're talking about specifically?
Yeah, I guess it would be online because I
Yeah.
I I wouldn't have seen how the New Zealand local
How it
community
rolls
would
in
have
New Zealand?
changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I so I started actually playing in April of last year,
Hmm.
and I think I became a part of the community not long before that online, probably 4 or 5 months maybe. So I I wasn't part of what you're talking about. So like the
Okay.
online, and I'm in the Flesh and Blood worldwide Discord, but I don't spend any time in there. I pretty much live on Twitter. And that's where I've met most people. So I think, and where I spend time, no, I think it's probably there's less Kiwis on there or New Zealanders. Sorry, I keep referring to us as Kiwis. Than perhaps what you saw back in Monarch. I mean,
Okay.
we've seen a bit of a resurgence. Like I think Kale's on there now, Kale McCreath, and a few other of our top players who weren't on there 6 months ago are now kind of getting in there, which is cool.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, that's been my experience. So that sounds really cool, though. So were they pretty prevalent back in the day?
Oh, absolutely. It was. I mean, the guests that we had previously to you said, it was fun. It was the Wild West days. There was one incident where a lot of the top New Zealand players decided to invade the Canadian server because there was some kind of beef going on. It was crazy. It
I'm
was
not surprised.
yeah,
I think
yeah.
I think at the time, like New Zealand players had like a 6 to 9 month head start on the game,
mm,
Yeah.
and that was one of the early reasons as to why they were better. They had developed metas and they had
hmm
figured out good cards and bad cards and deck lists, and people were over here in North America were still just getting into the game and
Yeah.
learning. So I think they really did have an advantage, and maybe just by time and size of player base that gap is maybe um, closed a bit or fully. I don't know.
I think it's definitely close. Sorry, those New Zealand players that are listening. But I mean, it's, we see there's a plethora of incredible players from around the world, from every part of the world. It's not just New Zealand. Yeah, we see, Matt Rogers, he's usually top eighting something, but, there's some fantastic players from Australia, Canada, the US, Poland, all over the place. So
Yep.
I think we've closed that gap, and now that Japan's jumping on the bandwagon,
Yeah.
I don't think we've even seen, potentially the best of the best. We've got some awesome countries jumping on board now.
Yeah. I guess my last question about the topic of New Zealand is
Mm,
are you proud that the game, a little game called Flesh and Blood from New Zealand has taken over the world in a sense?
absolutely.
Yeah. What does
Yes,
it mean to you? Yeah.
it is. I am very proud. And so when I'm talking to people or meeting people, and, even in my old job, I taught my entire team how to play Flesh and Blood. I bought them decks my last week there, and we played. And so, you know, I'm always talking about the game. They're like, oh, what is it? Is it like, you know, poker? And I'm like, no, 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 no. It's a trading card game. They're like, what is that? And so
Yeah.
I get to explain it, talk about it. And as soon as I say it's made in New Zealand, they're like, really? And so I'm very proud. And other people get really excited when they hear that, we've got this game that's worldwide that's from little old New Zealand. And I mean, in our country, I think, was it this year? Last year? Last year we made, I think it was like the Deloitte's top 50 companies in New Zealand, and LSS was number one for doing like thousands of percent over like revenue, something ridiculous, like 7,000, something amazing like that. So, I mean, it is very cool, and it's, it just so happens to be my favorite game, so even better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally. Do you consider yourself like a competitive player, a casual player? Like, what's your level of engagement when it comes to like playing the game?
Good question. All these great questions. I I would say I'm probably competitive. So my
Okay.
ambition is to, I'd love to. My next goal is to win a pro quest. I got one coming up in a couple of weeks. I've come, top eight at a couple last round. I've won my skirmishes. I'm like, okay, cool.
Nice.
Nice.
And yeah, so I've got different goals. But even though, I like to play competitively, still very much into wanting to just play casually. Like I got the round the table, and
Yeah.
I've been carrying that around for like the last week and a half to every armory I go to and playing with people, and it's so much fun. That's not competitive. That's just fun,
Yeah.
and we
Nice.
need more of that.
So the Pro Quest, is it local to you, or do you have to like travel to like Auckland? And
We're
how
very
far is Auckland?
fortunate. Auckland, for me, when I'm driving, it's 2.5 hours, but everyone's like, oh
Okay.
my God, you drive like an old lady. Apparently, it's 2 hours if you're a speed demon.
Okay.
But Auckland, I won't be going to Auckland. We've been fortunate enough to have one in my home city, very lucky.
Nice.
And there's another one about an hour's drive away in a place called Hamilton. That's a draft, and then our one is CC. So in New Zealand, I think we only got one, two, three. I think we only got 5cc draft. Sorry, 5cc PQs.
Yeah.
The
Okay.
rest are draft.
So another question, staying in this kind of realm, how do you engage in the Flesh and Blood community nowadays? Are you just a player? I already kind of know the answer to that, but what else do you do besides just kind of playing?
Well, as part of my intro, Felix talked about a podcast that I have with my friend Elaine. So that's kind of been on the back burner for a little while because that podcast is targeted towards women in gaming, and raising up that part of the community and empowering women. But that's been on hold because we ran a Rainbow Pitch League, which is an online league for women and gender minorities that finished up a couple of months ago.
Hmm.
That's the kind of stuff that I get into. Our player base where I live, so we have two LGSs here. Also very lucky to have two. We've had one for a very long time. It's been kind of waning with numbers, and I think some people are burnt out. I know one person was after nationals and just, yeah. So trying to, like, we've been looking at trying to get new players in, but we need to do more to get people in. I taught my nephew, he's 9, over the holidays last week. I taught him how to play, and he's now likes playing Ira. So I'm like, okay, cool. But that's kind of, yeah. I play podcast. Organising. We'll be running another league next year, so we need to start organising that. And yeah, that's what I do. I'd like to do more. I did have a dream of going out to girls' schools and teaching girls how to play. So now that I don't have a job technically and I'm a lady of leisure, I could potentially do that. So that's something I might think about doing over the next couple of months.
You talked about the importance of having 2 game stores locally support the game, but you mentioned
Mm,
some concerns that maybe sometimes the player base gets burnt out, or
mm,
sometimes it shrinks, sometimes it grows. So clearly your local scene is important to you, and we're just
yes,
curious, I think, what makes it important to you.
the relationships, the friendships that I have, that's important. So there've been a few people that have burnt out. And we've actually got quite a few women. Well, we've got less now because they've moved to another city, but um, I think that's what's important to me is the friendships that I have, and that people are just like, meh. Um, I want to play Magic the Gathering. I'm like, no, but cool. You do you
Mhm.
if that's what you want to do. You can play a different game. You don't have to play Flesh and Blood all the time. Um, yeah, so that's what is important to me. Um, but it's interesting because I was having a conversation. Who was I talking to? I was talking to someone last night about, oh, it was Kale. It was Kale McCreath. And we were talking about, how armories are going and numbers. And I think they get 6 to 10 people at their
Mhm.
armories in Auckland, which is huge. Like for us, that's amazing. But Auckland's a huge city. And I was like, well, sometimes our armories aren't even firing, which
Right.
is pretty sad. And just talking about, the different reasons why people burnt out is a big one. I actually haven't been to an armory since Nats. So I hadn't been for like 5 weeks, I think, because I was pretty much, I'd still talk to people through chat
Yeah.
and encourage people to go, but I was like, no, I need a rest. Um, so just talking about the different reasons, and I think to try to help not only sustain the base but build it, um, the players, along with the LGS, I think it's their responsibility to try to bring new people in as well. Like fresh blood is always really cool, right? Like when you've got a new
Yep.
person, we've got a couple of newbies, and like teaching them to play and, seeing the excitement that you once had when you first started and that whole learning curve. So, sorry, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but it's something that I've been thinking about because the numbers have been kind of low and like, okay, what do we need to do? And because the last thing I want, because like we've got an armory tomorrow, and I hope I'm not the only person there. I'll be very sad.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, what can we do to help build the community back up and get people back in, and whether it's changing heroes as well, because we all kind of play the same heroes, and people kind of get sick of it.
Yeah.
So being like, right, this week, everybody, we're going to play Blitz, and you got to play somebody you've never played before, just to mix it up a bit. And because it also sucks if you're winning all the time and people are always losing all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's for me when I first started. Like I didn't win for a while, and then when I finally won an armory, it was super exciting. But now the shoe's on the other foot, and I feel like, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm like, okay, we just need to change heroes, and I don't want to give games away, but you know, I don't know how to put that. I just, yeah, it does suck for other people to constantly come and not win.
Oh, I think we've all kind of been there where, this game is difficult and it takes a while to start getting wins. I'm like
Yeah.
myself, I'm not somebody that could just swap heroes and win an armory. I need to somehow put time into that hero and eventually get better at it and learn the sequences that you're looking for and the turnaround turns. So I think that's a really good way to, sort of, I guess, stop winning or doing well or being that
Yeah.
continuous threat at an armory and make it a little bit more fun for the new people. Kind of while you were talking about burnout,
Mm.
do you think that there's too many official LSS events. One of the I feel like, because like I talked to my wife about going to stuff all of the time, and I feel like, well, okay, after skirmish season, it'll be a break. I won't be going to events. I won't be practicing with the boys. It'll slow down, and that day never comes. It's like skirmishes into PQs or RTNs or Nats or some sort of calling that people are testing for, and you kind of always want to be a part of it. Do you think that there is too much on the schedule and that's what's burning people out, or do you think it's maybe something else?
Again, that's a great question, and I've heard that bandied around a bit. It's interesting because another part of the conversation I was having with Carl the other day is that he was like, "Oh, we don't have enough events in New Zealand, to
Hmm.
keep people's interest up." Whereas in the States or a country, perhaps maybe in Canada, I'm not sure, but definitely in the States, you can get fatigued.
Hmm.
There's battle hardens, there's callings, you might have been a state where you could attend 7 armories in a week. Although you can do that in Auckland as well. I think they've got 7 armories in a week you can
Yep.
go to. So the world is your oyster when it comes to playing Fab. So, and the people that have been burnt out that I know of, and even me, I think, our own decision to invest time and energy into the game. And if, just like, when you're working, right, you've got to manage your stress and all that kind of stuff. If you're not doing it appropriately, then you're going to burn out. You're going to
Hmm.
get sick of it. So I think it's our responsibility to make sure we're keeping ourselves in check. Do I think that there's too many events? No. I think it is up to an individual to make a decision. Do I really need to attend the skirmish? If I'm a competitive player, do I care? Maybe. Could I invest that time in myself to maybe relax a little bit and maybe prepare for, I don't know, a pro quest? Yes. If you're going to play every skirmish, every pro quest, every armory, and prepare for worlds and pro tour and everything else, then you're going to get burnt
Yeah.
out. And you can't put that on LSS. It's not their fault. They put these events up for people to make their own conscious decisions on whether they're going to attend. That's my 2 cents.
No, that's a really great answer.
What do you guys think? I'm interested in what you guys think.
Oh, I think you're I think you're right. For me, it consumes me all of the time. Like
Mm,
somebody now that it's a podcast creator, I attend up to 3 armories a week. Um,
wow. Cool.
if if I'm not doing that, I am consuming YouTube videos or scanning the discords. Like that's kind of my life. If I'm not doing something with my family and I have free time, Flesh and Blood is consuming me. And I did get a little bit burnt out a little while ago, a few months ago. Like took
Mm,
a couple of years, and I needed a break from doing stuff. But I've also felt lost at the same time. I'm like, I could be at the armory tonight playing games, even though I'm sitting here at home doing nothing. So
mm,
I think you're right in that it's in the control of the player and the person that they have to regulate how much they engage. Because like I said, for me, it was all consuming because I don't know, James White just created such a fantastic game that I can't get it out of my head,
Yeah.
and I just
we
genuinely
feel
enjoy
you.
it.
We understand.
Right. And then, like you mentioned, also the community that has uh, gotten into the game, just wonderful people that I enjoy spending time with that basically instantly became friends. Felix and I didn't know each other prior to Flesh and Blood, and here we are doing a podcast weekly together. So that's kind of my take on it.
Mm,
Yeah, even further to that, I think because the game is young, I think a lot of people that are leaders in the community or people that are pushing the game feel a pressure to be there for every skirmish, for every pro quest, for every RTN,
mm,
because you want to be there, you want to show that the game is growing, you want to be there on the front lines walking the walk when you say, hey, try this game out, come to these tournaments, come to these armories. Because if you just tell people to go to an event but you never show up, like, people might ask some questions about how genuine you're being. So I totally get that pressure, I feel that pressure sometimes,
mm,
but I think you have to at the same time be willing to loose, just pull back a little bit. And remember, at the end of the day, you have to prioritize yourself, your family. Like, the game at the end of the day is just a game. It's not family, it's not health, it's not,
Mm.
even your job or whatever else is important. So yeah, a lot of
That's a
this is
good
a very
point,
complicated topic.
Felix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's self-imposed pressures, and
Yeah.
I should turn up, and you guys have your podcasts, obviously, and maybe you feel a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, yeah,
So, Melody, you are one of the people leading the charge for greater diversity and inclusion of different minority groups in our hobby through so many initiatives like the Pitch Perfect podcast, the Rainbow X Pitch League, and just your ongoing engagement generally in the community. Could you tell me about why it's important to you to be on the front lines advocating like you do?
yeah. Hey, thank you for noting, the I guess the different things that I support. I think that just in gaming spaces in general, there is a lack of representation of women. Um, in some, there's probably a little bit more, but we don't really have a great voice, I think, in these spaces. And part of the reason for starting Pitch Perfect is we saw that. We were two women, and we're like, hey, I went a bit crazy, and I was trying to find all the female players in New Zealand. So I set up a chat, and I went out there, and I'm like, where is everybody? To one woman, there's like 20 men. And, you know, it's been an interesting journey, but there are, I guess there are things that women experience that men don't when it comes to gaming environments. So I think bringing, those, I guess some of them are issues, but concerns to the fore through the Pitch Perfect podcast has been really important. And there's the saying, boys will be boys, and how, and this is a generalization, right? Like, this isn't all guys, how they might be, or how they might communicate with each other or with you, or their behavior at LGSs or events or whatever, how that impacts on women or how people can feel. I think that has been another really important aspect of what we've done on the Pitch Perfect podcast. And we've had perspectives from both sides, right? Like female and male, you know, sometimes guys have absolutely no idea. And, and it might not always be guys as well. It can be just behavior in general, just to make it more inviting, not just for women, but for anybody at all that's attending an LGS or an event, or new or old. So I guess highlighting the change that needs to be made in these spaces, and giving a voice to those to help influence that change has been really important to me, and I'm going to say also Elaine. And we've seen it. Like, I personally have had a couple of, I've had messages from people that have listened to our podcast, and very teary messages, people very emotional, saying, like, this is what we've experienced, and thank you. And, I'm going to try out this particular thing with this person. And I even talked about it on one of our podcasts. So when I very first started playing Flesh and Blood, my second ever armory, I travelled, out of town to go to an armory. I was all bushy-tailed and bright-eyed, and it was the evening, and it was maybe 12 of us playing, I think, and all dudes. That's cool. I'm like, great. And there was a guy sitting next to me, and he absolutely lost his shit. He was a brute. He was Rhino. He was playing against a Kano player, and he absolutely lost it. And he was like, nah, fuck this. Can I swear?
Yeah,
You
go for
can
Yeah.
say
it.
And he's
whatever
like,
you want.
fuck this. And he's like, nah. And he threw all his shit around. He's like, nah, I'm not fucking playing. And he packed up his stuff, and he packed a big hissy fit, and he walked away. And I was like, is he okay? What's going on? What's going on? And I freaked out, because I'm like, I've never seen behavior like that before. And I don't think it's very common, but he's like, fuck, hey, no, fuck this. Anyway, I would go over to the city, it's in Hamilton, and I'd play, and the behavior didn't change. And I'm like, okay, is anybody talking to him? What's going on? So I actually had a word to him. and said, this behavior is not cool. This is how you're making people feel. And he's like, oh. And then we had a skirmish, and his, they called up the pairings, and of course his first pairing is Kano. He hates Kano.
Mhm.
And I took him aside and I'm like, you just need to calm down. Just, chill out. Don't worry about it. You're zen, whatever the outcome is. And he's like, "Argh." And anyway, after that, he came up to me and he's like, you'd be so proud of me, Melody. He's like, you know what? I didn't lose my shit. I was really calm. And, thank you. And I'm like, sometimes it is just having a conversation with somebody. I mean, it took a little while, it took a couple of months, but, he, for anybody else, male or female, that might have come up against that situation, like my second armory, would have been like, fuck this. No, I'm not coming back. I've got pretty tough skin. So I was just like, oh my God, what's going on? And I got a message about that particular person from some people in the community who are like, thank you for talking to him. He's changed and now it's much nicer. So I think while it's great to advocate for the change that you want to see, also need to be a part of it, and if you see behavior out there that's not cool, is talking to that person if, you feel safe to do so. And, there's been other occasions as well. I mean, it's not perfect. I don't think in any, if you any game, you're not going to get the sort of perfect community, but people can't change if you don't give them the opportunity to. So, or don't tell them, or share with them, well, this is how that makes me feel. And if they're reasonable, they'll take it on board. Sorry, that was my big long story.
Thank you so much for sharing that story with us, Melody. And it takes a lot of courage to confront someone in a situation like that. And that's kind of the thing that you sign up for when you lead the charge on any kind of change in a community, be it changing one person's behavior, aggressive behavior, or trying to shape the attitudes towards a whole minority group, like you're doing with the podcast and the Rainbow Pitch League. And if I can ask, like you've shared that a lot of people have reached out to you. Can you share some, like, what do you feel the greatest success has been in all of your advocacy and engagement so far?
I think, and this is a combination. So this is between the Rainbow Pitch League and Pitch Perfect podcast and the feedback and everything. It has been so. Let me just think about this. How am I going to word this? I think it's creating, and it's probably a bit more to do with the Rainbow Pitch League, but with that, it was being able to create a safe space for women and gender minorities to play the game they love with like-minded people in a space where they felt safe. Which was, there are a few pillars with the Rainbow Pitch League, and we've got pillars in Pitch Perfect, but and that's kind of, separate to the Rainbow Pitch League. That's kind of the feedback that we'd had from listeners, the women listeners who were like, wow, I feel, it's awesome to see that there are other women out there playing, and I feel more empowered to go out into my LGS. Like I was a little bit nervous, but, like that, those kinds of emails or I guess feedback from people has been amazing. And I think that's probably, been one of the greatest things.
That's so nice to hear. And man, I think about all the great strides, because there is a lot of progress. I think when I see and I hear my nieces and nephews, they have D&D clubs in their schools now, and I hear that it's a perfect gender balance, or it's close to 50-50, and it's
Oh,
acceptable
that's so
for both
cool.
men and women to be playing these games. And there's all these great shows like I don't know, like Critical Role and all these
Mm.
others that have men and women playing awesome parts, and they're all kicking ass together. And I think there's been so many good advances in gaming, but some segments might be a little bit further ahead than others. Um, and yeah, no, just I'm really excited about what you're doing, and it just gives me a lot of hope, I guess, in in humanity and in the flesh and blood community that stories like that are being shared. So overall, then, do you feel supported by LSS officially for your efforts and also by the online community?
Absolutely, 110%. So LSS and James have been incredible. LSS actually sponsored some of the prizing for the Rainbow Pitch League, some really cool cold foil hero cards. And the online community are, again, they're incredibly supportive, loving community who just want to, want to elevate people and give people hugs and support each other. So yeah, I definitely do, and I'm sure, thinking about Elaine and Kiki, who are part of Pitch Perfect and Rainbow Pitch League, could say the same. Like, but personally, yes, definitely.
That's really great to hear. I think one thing that I remember that LSS did was there was a fundraiser. I think it was the professor, like Magic, but I guess he's now Flesh and Blood too. But the professor held a giveaway in support of, I think it was the transgender community. And I think LSS donated a lore book to that as well. So
Yes, they did.
yeah, I mean, yeah, so just something like that shows that, they're willing to support, initiatives like that in
Mm.
support of various minority groups. So no, massive shout outs for that. I guess just moving on though, like is there anything that you feel that either the overall community or LSS can do better to support, further outreach of the game to these minority groups?
Again, another good question. I guess the short answer is we can always do more, right? Always, always,
Mhm.
always. Um, it's an interesting question for LSS or Flesh and Blood. Like, I think, I mean, their focus is to grow the player base. And through the story of Flesh and Blood, which, is very inclusive with, I guess, gender minorities and female, mana wahine, which means really strong female characters and all that sort of stuff, that
Mhm.
sort of helps to bring people into the game. I don't know. I'm not quite sure obviously what their marketing strategy and whatnot is, but I also think that there is a responsibility, like I talked about before, like we've all got responsibility to try to bring, you know, more diversity to the game, whether that's running learn to plays or, or if you've got a new person that comes to play and maybe it's a woman or a Māori or I don't know, somebody that is a gender minority that you've noticed, is to be supportive, inclusive, and like I would imagine most people in the Flesh and Blood community would be. Um, but yeah, I don't know. That's not a great answer, but and I'm sure people have other views on how they think maybe LSS could do more. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
Well, it's an impossible question to answer fully, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like being asked, "Hey, how would you solve, discrimination
Mm,
worldwide, and how can Legend Story Studios stop it?" I I definitely get that, and it's all about small acts, right?
mm,
Because everyone is an individual that can only do so much. If I myself can get up on a soapbox just for a moment, it's I work in construction. I'm an engineer, and one thing that we say, or one thing that the good companies that work in the industry say is, if you see it, you own it,
mm.
and if you walk by, you condone it. I think about
Oh.
all the different work. If you think about all the different workplace accidents that happen, if someone's not wearing their hard hat or if someone's doing something incorrectly and then they end up injuring themselves or worse, then it's the responsibility of the entire crew, of
Mm,
course, management, but it's the responsibility of everyone. We all have a duty to look out for each other and to protect each other. The challenging thing about games is that, unlike a workplace accident, it's not apparent when we've lost someone. It's not
Mm,
like, this worker wasn't wearing the hard hat and they got hit in the head. It's this person went to the game store or went to a game group and experienced discrimination, and now they're not there anymore. We don't see that. They probably will leave quietly, not
yes,
wanting to make a fuss, and we've lost that. So it puts an even greater on us as individuals to look out for that behavior and to stop it, where it stands.
I love
That's
that.
my piece.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's awesome. What about you, Shay? Any thoughts? Who's doing the interviewing here? Melody? Yes. Shay?
Yeah. I like I like that you keep turning it. I can't articulate as well as you two already have. So yeah, I don't know.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I
No,
think.
it's
Oh,
It,
it's a very, very challenging topic, and you know even myself, I can go into a game store or I can go into many places and feel like I fit right in, but not everyone has that privilege. And that's why, yeah, having all these different places where people do feel safe is very, very important. And to create more safe spaces and to make sure that the spaces that we do have are kept safe is another very important thing. So
yes.
yeah, it's all one and the same.
And I think if I can talk to, so for those that are listening, before we jumped on, we had a bit of a korero. Korero means discussion, um, about flesh and blood and stuff. And I've talked about it before on, I think, our podcast is, and we talked about it earlier in our discussion today, is the culture of flesh and blood in the community. And I strongly, strongly, strongly believe and think that is hugely influenced by James and also the entire team at LSS, which is partly a Kiwi thing, obviously, because we're all New Zealanders. And that culture, and we talked about, the first time to the listeners out there. God, should I join your podcast? Anyway, we talked about the first time we met
Yes.
James
absolutely.
and how, our experiences with meeting him and how genuine he is. And he is like that with every single person. Like when you're talking to him, it's just you and him. And I was telling Shane Felix, you know, you'll talk to him and then maybe talk to him 6 months later and he'll remember everything about that conversation. He'll draw on it. He remembers little things about people. He's genuine and he cares. And that floats right through to the culture that we have in flesh and blood. And so I think that, like I said, I've not been a part of any other gaming communities apart from Pokemon Go. I had no idea who the CEO of that company was, or I knew Niantic were the developers, but we created our own sort of um, communities and culture. But I think that's a large part of why we have such a great community. And I think with that, we can help to, uphold the values and, the type of behavior that we want to see out there. Yeah.
Yeah. This is a tough topic to want to wrap up here. It's so important and there's so much to say, but I guess, Melody, if you do have a top tip or one thing that our listeners can put into action in their local communities, would you have just something to that they can take away?
A top tip. Oh, that's a tough one. Oh,
Just some words of wisdom.
I don't have any words of wisdom. I'm
Anything.
thinking, just treating people like you would treat your own family. Hopefully, you're nice to your family, but
Yeah.
maybe that's not a good
Good
tip.
point.
Well,
Yeah.
like being thoughtful and kind and inclusive. Whoever comes across your path, no matter what they look like, what they sound like, anything to do with the person, just treating them as one of your own and, making them feel included. If they don't come back, whatever, cool. It doesn't matter. You know that you've done your part and you've been a good human being. Um, that's the only top tip, one tip. I mean, there's a whole lot of other stuff behind that, but I think that's, just be a nice person.
Can you tell us about running the Rainbow X
Hmm.
Pitch League? What that's like? Where did the idea come from?
Yeah. Um. So the rainbow, we need to get rid of the X, but rainbow, because it's supposed to be like, rainbow times pitch, rainbow pitch league. Anyway,
Okay.
that had been. So we had Yuki on our show in the early days of Pitch Perfect, and we had been thinking about, it'd be cool to run an event, and Yuki kind of challenged us to it, and we're like, ha 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 ha, okay, cool, we've got to do it now that we told Yuki we were going to do it, and we'd been putting it off because there had been different events. We just talked about events, right? And in the States, there's
Hmm.
25 million of them. So
Hmm.
we couldn't just put it off because the States was having a battle hardened or whatever. We just had to do it. So um, we originally, because I had already put into motion a Pitch Perfect event in New Zealand, like I'd partnered up with a couple of LGSs. And then we thought, you know what? Let's get Kiki involved. So Kiki um, looks after, is the head of the Rainbow. I was going to say Rainbow Pitch, Rainbow Foils Discord. So that's for gender minorities and queer folk and whatnot. And Kiki lives in Wellington, so Kiki and I are friends like from New Zealand, and we wanted to bring everybody together. And we're like, let's do it all together. So, and let's make it for all the minorities.
Hmm.
And yeah, and so that's basically how sort of the idea popped up, and we thought, we're very aligned with our values and what we want to do for the community, and we came together.
Nice. What level of response were you thinking you might get from it when you did decide to put it out there?
We thought we'd get 30 people
Yeah.
at the most. Um, I was optimistic. I was like, because we put a cap at 64, and
Right.
then we got 64 under registrations within the first week of registrations being out. So we did not expect we were going to get that many. And then we had a couple of people that were on standby, and we had to take the registration down and cut it off. And so it was that's when shit got real for us, because we were like, oh my God, there are so many people that are going to play. Now we need to be
Yeah.
professional and organize all the stuff. We were being professional, but yeah. So it was a very exciting time when we were just always together, like online, and like how many registrations have come in, and yes.
What role did you fill behind the scenes?
Oh, you should ask Kiki and Elaine. So I was the one cracking the whip. I'm the organized one. So
Uh-huh.
Mm.
I set up like our online directory and knowledge management. And I organized all the structures in there. I had a little marketing plan going on. I had all sorts of. It's in Confluence, which is a platform. We had weekly meetings where we had a chair, so we had a roster.
Hmm.
I made sure that people kept to the roster and on topic, because when you get three of us together, we just want to talk about everything but what we're supposed to be doing. So
Right.
I was keeping people in check, and like we all had our own specific roles. It was really, really cool because it kind of naturally happened. But I am very much, organizer, strategy, which is kind of part of my background as well, comms, that sort of stuff. Elaine took on a big technology role in terms of editing, and Kiki, like usually I'm the social media butterfly, but Kiki took that on, which was fantastic because I was too busy in the background cracking whips and trying to get stuff organized. So that's what I did. And I'm going to say right now that we totally underestimated how much work goes into
Hmm.
running an event like this. Kiki is a store manager of a LGS in Wellington called Cerberus Games. And so Kiki's run in person events for loads of different things. But even they said that the magnitude of the event we ran is totally different. Like we had to set, I created the website. That's something I did. Created the website, did all that sort of stuff. We had rules, we had code of conduct, we had values that we had to do. There's a whole heap of stuff that we had no idea about, that we had to basically level up and figure out. But we've got a much better idea of what we're going to do next year. And so I have already started planning for these things. Like, we even sent a survey out to participants after they'd finished participating in the league, and with all these different questions, so we can gauge what we can do better next time, what worked really well, all that sort of stuff. Sponsors, but I think next time we definitely will get more people on board to help. It was
Wow.
very challenging for the three of
That's
us.
that's a lot more than I even would have considered myself, thinking that you guys would end up doing like just put up some matches
Everything.
and you know what, let it go. But apparently there's a lot more going into it. From the survey, was there a standout comment or suggestion that you got from somebody or a group of people?
No, there was a general consensus, like everyone loved the culture and the vibe, because
Mhm.
part of what we wanted to do was to, again, create a safe space, so everyone hang out on our Discord. I think that's probably the big one. We actually haven't read them all. We got 35 or 36 responses from 64.
That's
Normally, when
pretty
you
good.
put out surveys, because I come from a business background, you send out 100, you get 2 back.
Mhm.
So we just got absolutely smashed, which was fantastic. But I think there's definitely, logistically, there are things that we can improve on, that we got feedback on, that we've learnt. So a big thing. So if anyone out there who's listening wants to run an event and has sponsors, please, please, please ask them to send the prizes. Don't get them to send them to you and send them out. So it's been a logistical nightmare for us, because I've got some of the prizes here. Kiki's got them down in Wellington. Elaine's got them in the US. So we've been
Right.
shipping them to each other, and we asked participants, because it's a not-for-profit
Right.
venture, to pay for the shipping. So then we've had to get the shipping from people, and then estimate shipping, and then ship stuff ourselves. And it has been a great learning for us, an opportunity.
Mhm.
Yes.
I know you already touched on a bunch of stuff already, but was there
Mm.
something that surprised you being involved with so many people in a tournament like this that you kind of didn't see coming?
Ooh. I don't think anything surprised me. Like, I knew it was going to be a lot of work, and I like to plan things out, and I definitely think we could have done more planning. They will probably say, no, we didn't need to, but we did, um, to make things run a lot smoother. But no, nothing really surprised me or stood out. Well, no, probably what did surprise me and the team was the amount of support and sponsorship. Like, the people that wanted to donate stuff, it was
Yeah.
absolutely insane. We just got smashed. People, because I made a contact form on our website, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll add in sponsorship, and we just started, they'd hear about it and they go, oh, we want to sponsor. People that make little tokens wanted to give stuff, from boxes of product, and that was really surprising. And even though you asked me before, what do you think of the support in the community? Do you think people support Pitch Perfect and what we've done? I didn't think it would be as much as we got. Like, we were giving away 4 prizes, I think, a week. We gave, I
Wow.
don't know, like 80, 90 prizes out. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So I think that was probably the biggest surprise, is, you know, people do actually care for what we're doing, and that was really cool.
Yeah, that's really excellent to hear. Success is an interesting word, and everybody
Mm,
gauges it differently. Do you consider the Rainbow Pitch League a success?
yes, yes. And you're absolutely right. Success, it depends on what your measurement of success is. Did it achieve the goals that we set out, which was, we had our pillars? Did it empower our community? Yes. Did we give a voice to our community? I think, yes, we did. Um, did we help to build the community? yes, like when I say we, I mean we wanted to bring everyone together.
Hmm.
We were the driving force behind it. Yeah, I definitely think so. Um, is there room for improvement? Yes. Yep. I definitely think we can do things differently. And, some of the feedback, it hasn't all been, rosy. It's been like, oh, well, we thought this or we thought that. And, some people felt differently, like our perspective on things, we found out that wasn't the same perspective from others. So working through that as well. Yes, I think it was successful, but I also think that there are lots of opportunities for us to improve next time.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. What's coming up next for the league? Can you share?
That's a really good question. I've said that like 25 million times through this interview. What's coming next is that yes, we're having one. That's all I can say.
Okay.
That will definitely be next year, and there have been talks, although it will take a lot of organising to potentially run one in the flesh and blood somewhere. Um, oh my goodness, if we could run one at the Calling in January, like as part of a side event, that would
Yeah.
just blow my mind. I haven't talked to the team about that. That actually, if they listen to this, they're going to be like, "What? We don't have enough time, Melody." But we're definitely going to run one online. There is potential that oh no, this is so scary, that the player number might be uncapped,
Right.
which will be insane. And then there is potential that there will be an in-person event at some stage. It might only be
Okay.
really small. I don't know, but it'll be cool to actually meet people. And it's most likely going to be at a big event if we're able to get in there, like on a side event or something.
Hmm. What sort of support do you need to make the next season even better?
hmm. Um, it would be, and we've talked about this as a team. We haven't actually written it out properly or planned for it. It would be actually sharing the load with the mahi or the work that we do. People that are, I mean, even down to like our emails, right? Like we're customer service. There's that sort of aspect. There's the editing, which while Elaine and actually Kiki, they did some of the editing as well. It takes up a lot of time and a lot of effort. And we're all trying to, we're working full time as well
Hmm.
and trying to live our own lives outside of that. Like having support with people that don't mind giving up some of their time to help us in the areas where we're not experts, to help things run smoother, that would be a huge help. I think that would be the big one for us.
I have one more question for you on this topic to put you on
Mm.
the spot. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to share about the Rainbow League?
No, I think we covered everything. I hope that everyone, or not well, those that are listening, maybe got to see at least one of the games. So they were streamed on Pitch Perfect. We had Yuki helping with casting and a few other people. Mara Ferris, Dromai Main, she linked up with Kiki, and I think that's also something that we're going to change next time, is to be a lot more, I don't know, to be a bit slicker with our streaming and promotion of that,
Hmm.
because I don't know if we had a lot of views, but I think we could have had a lot more, and there was a lot of interest. So yeah.
I know I watched a bunch of the episodes on YouTube. I didn't get to watch them live if they were streamed, but I really enjoyed them. And for those that don't know, it is a lot of work to organize people to
Time
like
zones.
right, like because this is worldwide. So and then you have, like you said, Yuki in Canada and people across the world putting this together. It's a lot of work, but it is. I from my side definitely appreciate it, and I look forward to it when you guys do it again.
Oh, thank you. And the cool thing is, so if anyone gets to watch any of the matches, although it was a very long one, I think it was 2 hours, our finale, our two finalists were actually able to meet up in the flesh and blood to play their final match because they live locally. Well, kind of
Mhm.
locally. Like, how cool is that? If that had been New
Oh,
Zealand, wouldn't have
that's
been able to
awesome.
happen. But we thought that was pretty cool,
It's
pretty
yeah, it's
special.
super rad.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Melody, we've covered so many different interesting topics here, and I feel like we could just keep talking and talking, but I think we will have to wrap this up. But before we do, could you just share with us, thinking back at all your memories and accomplishments and initiatives in the Flesh and Blood space, what's your standout favorite memory so far?
My standout memory. This is so Flesh and Blood on Twitter actually posted this 2 days ago as a question for everyone. I answered it with because it's so hard to pick. I answered that particular question from them as my first skirmish. I got into the top 8. It was like my second week of playing, and that was a very special moment. The standout moment for me and a great memory was the first spoiler that LSS gave to me. I had no idea that I was getting it. I'd only been playing the game for, I think, a few months, and I got an email and I'm like, what's this about? And, oh, can we call you Melody? I'm like, oh, sure. And I absolutely screamed the house down. Like, I lost my mind. And that was incredible. And I'm just sorry thinking about when that happened, and then when I told my family, and I was like, oh my god, it was pretty cool. And so, and every time LSS say, hey Melody, or hey Pitch Perfect, here's a preview card, I'm very humbled, because it's a pretty special thing. And every time I'm like, I don't think I'm cool enough to get one, but thank you. Okay. Thank you for
No,
for letting us showcase this, or me showcase that. So yeah, that's probably the one.
no, that's great, and again, just more evidence or more proof that LSS sees the work that you do as important, and that makes me very, very happy that whenever that happens. Do you have anything else or any closing thoughts that we didn't cover that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. Other than, um, for those that are listening, if you have the means and you're able to, I totally recommend coming to New Zealand in January for the Queenstown Calling. It is going to be incredible, and we're going to have the new set that we are getting the first look and draft at. It's going to be amazing. And we've got the celebrational. We're not sure quite what's happening there, but I think if people are able to, we've been waiting for an event in New Zealand, a big one like this, and if you're able to, I definitely would love to meet you there, because I'm going there. I'm going to be there with bells on, and I would love to meet as many people as possible from around the world.
From Felix and I, thank you so much for chatting with us today. If people wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you?
On Twitter or X. Well, I just did it so you people at home can't see me
I know.
doing the X, but
No.
yeah. So my Twitter handle thing, strangely, isn't Melody Likes. It is NZ Fashion, because I've had that
Right.
handle for a very long time. But that's probably the best place. That's where I'm hanging out. I'm a little quieter at the moment because I've just been doing lots of other fab stuff. But yeah, and I reply to everyone. Just reach out, holla, I'm here.
And you can reach us on YouTube, IP2 Podcast, on Twitter, IP2 Podcast, and on Mastodon, IP2 Podcast at wraith.social. Thank you.
Just wondering, is there a bit of lag?